Welcome to the NC Spin After Spin. Additional comments from our panelists just available on our website. I want to ask each of you, what do you wish you had said on last week's show, but you didn't? Becky Gray, I'll start with you.
Chris had mentioned charter schools. There was another bill that would allow the enrollment in charter schools to increase year to year from 20% to 30%. I think that's a real good move. We have very successful charter schools. There are long waiting lists for most of these, and in order to allow those successful charter schools to grow a little bit quicker, I think really fits a need. Now, I'd like to see it go from 30%, from 20% to 50%. But this is a move forward with that, and I think it's a good move, and I think it's clearly needed.
John Hood, what do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
Well, we briefly touched on the long-standing titanic struggle between commercial and recreational fishermen regarding the fish stocks offshore, and the fact that if everybody overfishes them, then nobody's going to benefit from that, but no one individual or industry has an incentive to withhold, hold back and not fish, because then somebody else will. This is a classic problem. The classic solution is tradable permits. So people North Carolina ought to be completely agnostic as to who takes fish out of the water. You ought to have permits to catch a certain amount of fish, and those should be tradable, bought and sold. Now, that doesn't make it easy, because you have to measure how many fish are left, roughly speaking, and try to set the permits accordingly. But having the legislature or any government agency decide the commercial fishermen should get that fish, or recreation, that is just simply not necessary or a wise way to use government power. Let it be a bid and auction process.
All right. Chris Fitzsimon, what do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
Well, obviously we talked about the crossover deadline, and several people made the point that this is not a hard and fast rule. I think it's really important for people who are watching to realize that what the crossover deadline does is it stops bills from the rank and file members. It gives legislative leaders a chance to say, I'm sorry, your bill didn't make the crossover deadline. But we've seen time and time and time again, anything the leadership wants is not subject to the crossover deadline. The most famous example is several years ago when a motorcycle safety bill was changed at the last minute to restrict abortion rights that hadn't passed either chamber. And this will happen this session too. So don't be worried or misled that all these things we talked about even tonight are dead. If the leaders of either chamber...
This goes to the stripping of content
bills
out
and
of
replacing them. So if the leaders in either chamber want any of the things that we said didn't make the crossover deadline, or anything else for that matter, there's still plenty of time, unfortunately, before the end of the session for that to happen.
Jim Morrow, what do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
Well, I think I would have talked about Marcy's Law. It's this bill that passed overwhelmingly in the House, and it would provide a constitutional amendment, put a constitutional amendment on the ballot next May in 2018 for victims' rights. But what's interesting is a lot of people still say it's not really needed. And what I find interesting is it's being pushed by a billionaire from California who made his money in the tech industry. And he's pushing these things not only in North Carolina, but across the country. And he would probably put in millions of dollars to pass a referendum next year.
Interesting. Well, thanks for watching the After Spin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.